Thank you very much for the invitation to come here today. I'm going to talk about some very broad areas of IQ, immigration, and the future of Europe. I'm going to do it in 5 steps. I will first give you a short, brief, the world's briefest course in intelligence testing and what it can be used for. Then I will talk about the relationship between intelligence and religion, then about intelligence, fertility, and democracy, then about intelligence, the demography, where it was democracy the first, demography is the fourth, and then I will present a model where I will try to integrate the whole thing. It's a very daring prospect, so I hope you will bear over with me. Here you have the very much used hierarchical model of intelligence. At the bottom here, you have test items, the single questions. They correlate weakly with general intelligence. Actually, when you take a single test item and correlate it with general intelligence, the correlation is only 0.10 or 0.15, where a correlation is an expression of the strength of the relationship between one variable and another. So what you got here is not very significant. The signal to noise ratio is very high. If you then do some factor analytic treatment of the data, and I won't go into details, but we can talk about that later on, you can establish some first order factors. This could be a verbal factor that consists of some questions in the verbal area, another list of verbal tests, and another list. Now, if you have a test of, say, visual spatial abilities or memory or whatever, you have some subtests down here, very little signal here, but then you can extract the signal up here and get a memory factor. And here you can get a spatial visualization factor. If you now statistically keep all this controlled, you can distill the general second order factor G, invented by the British psychologist Spearman around 1904. He said, don't call it anything, because if you call it wisdom or smartness or anything like that, you will mislead people. Just call it G, because it refers to an operational definition, not to smartness. Now, this is the hierarchy, but there is a horizontal dimension to it as well. When you conglomerate or aggregate data for many individuals in one country, you can calculate a national average IQ. Let me admit, when I heard about it the first time, I said, this is rubbish. So as a systematic person, I sat down and said, let's see if it makes sense. And apparently, the national average IQ correlates with a nation's education at least as high as individual measures correlate with one individual's education. It correlates with job status, with income, and it correlates negatively with faith. It correlates positively with achievement, and it even defines national wealth and democracy indexes more precisely than any economical theory could hope for. Now we are going for the individual perspective and looking at the relationship between religion and IQ. And the first hypothesis is that high IQ levels, or even high IQ groups, they use the scientific approach or something similar to that to reduce the uncertainty that meets all people in doing life. But the low IQ individuals, or the groups, they try to reduce their existential uncertainty by simplified supernatural worldviews or a religious denominational behavior that should, according to my hypothesis, fit their IQ. Let's see if that's true. The first hypothesis is something about education and lack of faith. 90% of the US population believes in a personal God. I believe this is less than that today. But if you have a Bachelor of Science, only 40% believe in a personal God. And if you're belonging to the group of eminent scientists, Nobel Prize winners and the like, only 10% say they have a personal God. Nature published also an article in '98, and they said, of the National Academy of Science, 72% are atheists, 22% are agnostics. Atheists are people who actively combat religion in society. Agnostics are people who say, well, I'm not sure I know. And probably this should be the proper scientific approach to it, because science cannot prove that anything does not exist. Only 7% of these high-ranking members believe in a personal God. So I wrote an article some years ago where I talked about the faith of a representative sample of Americans. And they were asked the question, what is your current religious preference if you have any at all? And then there were some groups where less than 50, satanic and so on. Unfortunately, I had to delete them. But there were enough people in this group of Roman Catholics, Baptists, Lutherans, Mormons, Muslims, atheists, personal philosophy, and so on. And I did some statistics on them. Actually, these are these are adolescents. These are not adults. And 26% of them say they belong to the Roman Catholic faith, and 19% to Baptist, and then down it goes: Jewish 1%, atheist 1%, Muslims. 60,000 are in this group, but they count as zero because they are taking out almost 15 million people. And 72% of them were whites, 12% were Hispanics, and 15% were blacks. If you look at the male-female difference of these 7 million males and 7 million females, males scored 103 and females 102. The difference is 1.3. I have said previously that the difference is about 4 to 5 to 6 IQ points. These are adolescents. The sex difference in intelligence appears around age 15. So this is not a very good study for looking at sex differences. Here we have your IQ of whites, IQ 106, Hispanics 96, blacks 91. And the difference between white and blacks are 14 IQ points. Between white and Hispanics is 9 IQ points. Nothing spectacular. Many other people have found the same. If you now ask the question, what IQ would atheists have as against religious people? 110 versus 105. The difference is about 5 IQ points. So atheists score higher. Now, if you somewhat subjectively divide them into these groups here with the current orientation here as atheist, liberal, religious, and dogmatic. And I can quarrel with you very many hours whether this definition is good. I don't think it's too good, but it was a shot. Now the atheists score 110 IQ points. Liberal, cultural Christians and so on score 108, and dogmatic people 105. So the dogmatics come out lowest, the atheists the highest. Now if you rank order them, you will see that Episcopalians, Anglicans have the highest IQ, closely followed by the Jewish group, the atheists, agnostics. In the middle you find Roman Catholics. The average is 106, and they are pretty close to that. Down come the Mormons, United Church of Christ, Bible Church, Muslims, personal philosophy. Down here comes Pentecostals. I won't go into details about this. So I would conclude that faith is a low IQ phenomenon. That's a statement that really makes you popular. The lower the IQ, the more dogmatic is their faith. And the more dogmatic, the lower is their income. I won't show anything about that. Now I'm going to the cross-national or the global perspective. If you make rank order correlations, Spearman's rank order correlations, and you look at high versus low IQ countries, you would see that the IQ and the corruption index for that country is minus 0.6, highly significant. This means that the higher the IQ, the higher the corruption index, because it's inversed here. IQ and democracy correlates 0.55. So democracy seems to be a high IQ phenomenon. IQ and fertility rate, and that's really what I find most disturbing. The correlation is negative and it's 0.82, which means that high IQ countries have a very low fertility rate. And I will argue in the following that this is the key to understand why Western civilization goes down. Now, if you compare disbelieving versus faithful countries, and we're using a measure by Zuckerman, but I won't go into that. So the disbelievers here, the more disbelievers there is, the higher is the IQ. The more disbelievers there is, the less corruption there is. Talk about religion has a positive influence. It seems not to be the case. Percentage of disbelievers and democracy index 0.56, and percent disbelievers and national fertility rates minus 0.76. High IQ countries are losers. Now, if you look at the level of replacement, and a couple needs 2.1 children per generation in order to sustain their own amount of genetic material in the next generation. These are the subfertile losers. We have 49 countries. Here are the superfertile winners of the future. We have 79 nations. The average IQ is 86, but as you can see, the losers have 96 and the winners have 79 IQ points. The corruption index is also much lower in the losers than in the winners. Democracy index, again, higher in the losing countries than in the winning countries. And of course, these figures are self-explanatory. So I will conclude that low IQ countries are less democratic, more corrupt, and more fertile than high IQ countries. Probably no surprise here. Countries who have many religious devotees are less democratic, more corrupt, and more fertile. This leads to a prediction. The super-fertile, religious, undemocratic, corrupt, low IQ people will, over time, replace the sub-fertile, democratic, disbelieving, non-corrupt, high IQ people. Welcome to the future, my dear. I will now talk about demography and fertility, and again, stay at the cross-national or global perspective. Richard Lynn is a British psychologist. I have the honor of editing a special issue honoring him at the age of 81. It will come in Personality and Individual Differences in a couple of months. He has an idea why people are more intelligent in the North.